Amnesty International says the government of Tanzania has escalated its repression of opposition figures, journalists and civil society groups and human rights defenders in a deliberate effort to silence critics, suppress civic engagement and maintain power. The general election is expected to be dominated by the ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi party after the disqualification of key opposition presidential candidates last month. Luhaga Pina was disqualified for a second time from running, while Tudu Lusu of the Chindama party is currently on trial for treason. Amnesty International is also calling for prompt and thorough investigations into all reported abductions, killings and enforced disappearance, and for those responsible to be held accountable. Now for more is Tendayi Mbanje, who is an observer with the Center for Elections Governance. You're welcome to the news this afternoon. Let me start by asking what your initial observations are regarding the level of political freedom and openness in Tanzania ahead of the elections.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having us. I think it has been over 6 months, there's been a call for reforms. If you notice, over a year, there's been a call for reforms that Tanzania was not ready for election, given the current political climate, which has been encompassing repression, abductions. Most of opposition figures have fled into exile. And we have seen that the leader of Chadema, Tundu, is in prison with bogus charges for treason. And we have seen also that leaders for Walendo has also most of them have been fled into exile. So the current political climate does not or is not allowing a fair competition, fair contestation, and does not guarantee a free and fair election. And this has been the call from civil society organizations across the continent. Even the African Commission on Human and People's Rights had a resolution on Tanzania ahead of the elections asking for reforms, asking for the government to respect human rights ahead of the election. Now,
based on your observations, what are the main challenges that we're looking at when it comes to ensuring a free and fair election in Tanzania and even in Africa as a whole?
The main challenge is that elections are not a one-man race. President Samia has managed to illegally using state institutions to eliminate all opponents. Elections must meet a threshold of competition for them to be to meet minimum standards of credibility and legitimacy. So this is an election where there is no competition. All the possible threats have been eliminated. Some are in jail, some have been killed, abducted, some have been forced into exile. That's one point. And the second point, free and fair elections is guaranteed when the civil society is allowed to operate and do its work. Civil society has been disenfranchised, has been repressed. The high levels of repression and surveillance has also caused discomfort and also have curtailed the work of civil society. So civil society did minimum work or is unable to do its work within the electoral environment. So all this have caused the lack of free and fairness into the election.
Right. Now, in cases like what we are seeing in Tanzania, where opposition voices or even civil society organizations face restrictions or obstacles and even just fleeing, going into exile, are these elections considered fair? And even before they start, as observers, what are your obligations? One has to ask, do they even hold sway on these elections?
So for elections to be considered free and fair, they must meet certain standards. Within a country holding elections domestically, they must meet a threshold within the constitutional threshold. They must also meet the threshold established within the Electoral Act. And also then with international standards, they must meet certain standards. There are standards of freeness, respect for rights, respect for freedoms, and also political competition is one key aspect that is tested when we're looking at the freeness and fairness of elections. And we also look at how the opponents are being treated within an election. That itself determines the standard of free and fairness. And we also look at the institutions. For example, we look at the Electoral Commission, its conduct, the perception around the Electoral Commission, whether it's meeting those standards. We look at the police, we look at all state institutions, the judiciary, for example, how it is handling litigation around electoral matters, among other things. So at this stage, all those institutions and the processes do not meet the threshold at this stage. So therefore, there is a perception that the elections do not meet the minimum standards of fairness and credibility.
Mbanje, thank you. We appreciate you for coming on. Mbanje is an observer just speaking to us ahead of what we hope to be a free and fair election.